Good morning, everybody. I'd like to call this special meeting of City Council to order. I want to recognize first we're on the traditional territory of the Snuneymuxw First Nation. Our clerk today will be Ms. Sky Snellgrove. The question period sign-up sheet is on the partition wall near the gallery. If during the meeting any member of the gallery has a question regarding an agenda item, please write down your name and the agenda item on the sheet and start a question period. The chair will call those who've signed up to the podium to address council. The first item on the agenda is the introduction of late items. Ms. Snellgrove.
We're adding agenda item 7L, audit planning report for the year ended December 31st, 2018 from KPMG.
Excellent. Can I have a motion for approval of the agenda as amended? Councillor Thorpe, seconded Councillor Hemmens. All those in favor? Contrary? Carried. Nothing to report. We seem to be meeting so frequently I don't have time to do anything in between meetings. But this is a good thing because the council's hard at work. Delegations. Delighted to welcome Leon Davis, the manager of Nanaimo District to BC SPCA regarding funding for Nanaimo Low-Income Spay and Neuter Initiatives Program. Good morning, Mr. Davis. Welcome.
Good morning, Worship Council. Thank you for seeing me today. I wanted to welcome to everybody. Almost everyone's new to me, but I'm excited about the future of our city. I've come just to give you an update on the SPCA, the Nanaimo SPCA, and Nanaimo's low-income spay and neuter program, the status and the work that it's done, and what it looks like for the future. My clicker works. 123 years we just celebrated the SPCA in BC, and we now have 44 locations, with obviously Nanaimo's branch being the newest and fanciest in Canada, I'll say. And we almost helped 50,000 animals last year provincially, which is a huge amount. It's jumped up. We have at the branch in Nanaimo 10 full-time staff, 3 part-time, 3 casual, and 100 volunteers. The organization itself has about 400 staff and something like 4,000 volunteers, so we really rely on volunteers to do the majority of the work that we have. We have 1 constable in Nanaimo who attends to about 450 complaints locally of animal cruelty or neglect. Through our branch, we do a whole bunch of things. Of course, we do sheltering and emergency rescue. Our human education program for children has taken some huge strides recently because we hired a humane educator. So we have summer camps, we go into schools, we have workshops, and we're teaching kids not only to be kind to animals, but our actual goal is to use our unique position to teach some kids between ages of 8 to 13 some empathy skills. And we're hoping that the work that we do could reduce bullying in schools and foster more respectful adult relationships as well. We do compassionate boarding for people who are in crisis. We have our low-income spay-neuter program, which we administrate. We donate the resources to administrate that. We don't take any of the money for ourselves. It goes directly back to the community. We have volunteer programs and social program partnerships with a variety of organizations, from John Howard to Edgewood. The jail, Haven House is a great one. Studies show that women who are in abusive relationships will stay up to 7 times longer if there's a pet involved. So we offer boarding for the pets while the women or the families get out and get to safety. So traditionally, we have had the SNP programs run for about 15 years, I think. And the city has generously given somewhere between $15,000 to $25,000 every 2 years towards that program. The cost of running the program for 2 years is about $84,000. Last year, we fixed 336 cats of people who are low income. We ran out of money for the first time in April. I think normally when a grant has been given, it's been through the contingency fund, and that was emptied early, I think, on in the year. So we got a little bit of private funding, and we do ask the owners to contribute something. So we might ask for $100, but we can waive it completely or lower it if it's undue hardship. We have seen a serious decline in surrendered kittens and cats. I went back as far as I could to 2006, where we were seeing over 1,000 cats coming into care, and now we are predicted in 2018 we're below 600. That's a huge amount. So we can say that the spay-neuter education that the public are having, coupled with the assistance, is making a major impact. And Nanaimo does have still a pretty serious overpopulation of cats. this fund is the only tool that Nanaimo has. Maybe a discussion for another time is to look at some bylaws. That's the biggest piece that's lacking to fight the root causes of cat overpopulation. I'm not talking about licensing cats, which is a hot button topic, but certainly looking at things like requirements of spaying, neutering, requirements of having identification on your cat so that whether it's a tattoo or a tag or a microchip, when they come in, we can just get them home more quickly. Catnap are a unique organization. They're volunteer run. They struggle. We do give them some grants throughout the year to help them. They deal primarily in semi-feral and feral populations. But again, because there is a lack of bylaws, they do refer people to us for the SNP program have owned cats. And Animal Control, the facility in Nanaimo, very willing to help with the cat problem. They have the space. They just don't have the infrastructure within the space, so cat cages and things like that. And they don't have any bylaws that empower them to actually assist, even though they want to. The same organization runs Animal Control in Victoria, and here's another hot button topic is the no roaming bylaw, which sounds ridiculous, right? How do you tell a cat not to roam? But they're really effective, and how it works in Victoria is it's complaint-based only. The bylaw gives animal control officers the ability, if there's a nuisance cat in the neighborhood digging up the yard, killing birds, attacking your pets, the legal ability to go and respond to that complaint and pick it up. It doesn't mean that there's people driving around in trucks, grabbing moggies randomly and sticking them in a van. And they report that it helps them greatly in their efforts in Victoria. So the request is $25,000 to be spent over 2 years. I managed to stretch this last request out to about 3 years with again, pushing back a little bit against owners to have a little bit of financial accountability. When it was a completely free program, everybody took advantage of it being free, of course. And then we started asking people to donate some money, which goes back into, this is a deferred fund. The SPCA doesn't take any money out of it. And people were quite able to contribute something, which is how we were able to kind of stretch it out a little bit. And we do have a private donor who gives us somewhere between $4,000, sometimes $6,000 a year. I am looking into other sources to try and help Nanaimo with its feral population. There are some organizations like PetSmart Charities who do give generous amounts of money to communities, and I'll be advocating strongly on Nanaimo's behalf to see if we can get some money to start a program hopefully next year. I can't promise it, but I'll try my best. So the funding would provide about 350 spay and neuter surgeries a year for owned low-income pets. This isn't applied to the SPCA-owned animals. We spend about $84,000 a year spaying and neutering surrendered.
I was going to say, Mr. Davis, we're well past the 5 this morning, and my limit timer, luckily.
Oh, have I gone past? That's not like me to talk on and on. This is the last slide, so we're good.
Good, thank you. It's broken, it's not working this morning, so fortune's smiling on you.
That's
Finish
okay,
your
yeah, I have no
presentation,
thought.
please.
You have the slides. I mean, this is some of the benefits of it. I think probably everyone understands what the benefits are to stemming the overpopulation of cats. So I will secede.
Thank you very much. Council members, questions? Councillor Thorpe.
Play with the machinery again. Thank you, Mr. Davis, for presenting. Personally, I want to thank you for the work that you do and the programs that the local SPC offers. I think it's a valuable service to our community. My question is in terms of process. I believe in the past you have made this request through the grant, what used to be the Grants Advisory Committee.
Yeah.
And the last time you appeared there was, you say, 3 years ago?
Probably almost 4 years ago, yeah, by the time we got the funding in the following year, I think.
And when you have done that in the past, you have been successful in receiving some money for a 2-year period usually?
Yes.
Right. I'll have questions for staff after we've finished with you. Thank you.
Councillor Armstrong.
And thank you once again for your presentation. I just wanted to go with something that is still on our books, which is the rabbit issue. Is that something that is still going on from your perspective, or with that recent outbreak of the virus that you have the issue with the rabbits?
It was devastating. Within a few weeks, we lost an estimated 10,000 rabbits in the city. A rabbit issue was a problem in the city. Of course, seeing something like that happen to them wasn't the solution we wanted. I haven't seen a rebound yet. There's still studies being done on how long this can stay in the environment. The SPCA and I will still under quarantine. We don't accept any rabbits in. Just north of our property is there's a little pullout there, talk to a couple of agencies about getting signs up that's talked about the bylaw of feeding rabbits, because that's what will drive this happening again, is people feeding and abandoning rabbits. And abandoning a rabbit's actually a potential $10,000 fine. I don't think people understand the impact of taking their children and feeding wild rabbits on the explosion of their population.
And a follow-up, if I may. You were involved, I think, helping us. We're doing a draft rabbit bylaw, like, to update that. Would one of your recommendations be that unless it's for the purpose of breeding, that they must be neutered or spayed?
Yes, I think if you want to categorize rabbits, you should responsibly have them. While they have this problem with Lima, we should, stay neutered.
Thank you.
Whether you're selling them or leaving them.
Thank you. Any other members of council? Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Mr. Davis. A couple of questions, if I may. You mentioned low criteria, low income. I was wondering if you could tell me the criteria which you choose people to utilize that.
I'm a very compassionate person, and whilst I would love to follow BC's low income threshold, I find that it is so hard to meet. Like, it's so low, and everyone's situations are different. So whilst we do sit and chat with people about their situation, you could have easily where you a family that is making well above the low income threshold, but they're struggling. Things happen in life, and we have those conversations with them, and sometimes people just need support. So it's kind of open to just having a discussion and figuring out what their needs are.
Thank you. And you also mentioned bylaws or lack thereof. Do you have any sets of bylaws that you might be willing to share with us of possible suggestions?
I have a BCSBC model bylaw, which is comprehensive, and council may not want to consider everything in it, but everything you could potentially ever want to consider is in it. Yeah.
Okay. And the other thing is, you're in Nanaimo district. How much of an area do you encompass, and are any of the spay and neutering done by people outside the city of Nanaimo's limits?
We do have some of the RDN, so our warrant area extends to basically the border of Ladysmith to Nanoose Bay. But this did come up before. Somebody suggested on council that I talk to the RDN about some funding as well, and I did, and the RDN came back. I don't understand all this, but they said there is money allocated from the RDN to the city of Nanaimo for things like this, so that would be appropriate. That might make more sense to me. But no, we don't accept access to that fund for cities outside of Nanaimo and that area.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else before I go to Councillor Thorpe and questions to staff? Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, as I mentioned, I recall that Grants Advisory Committee used to deal with Mr. Davis's requests on a semi-annual basis and looked favorably upon them. And during those discussions, I seem to recall there was debate about whether or not this should actually become a line item in our budget. I thought it had. Am I mistaken, Ms. Mercer?
Through the chair to
Yes,
Councillor
Mercer.
Thorpe. It has not become a line item, and historically has been funded from council contingency. So the budget has not been updated to include a line item.
Okay, I know there was
It could be,
discussion.
though. It could be.
I know there was discussion, but all right, thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Through you to staff, is there an ability for, and I'm talking if all the grants are coming
Forward, that we start establishing that it's for a 3-year period, because I think that it then enables them to get better access to federal and provincial funding.
Ms. Mercer.
So you're looking for a stipulation that it's for, that we say that it's for 3 years?
Yeah, follow up. Like, let's say we say that for the next 3 years, each year, like, the start of whatever our fiscal years, you would receive, if it's a 10,000, and we approved it, 10,000 up until, like, for these purposes, till 2021 or 2022.
We can look at that.
Yeah, I would appreciate that, because I think it would really make a difference for some of the nonprofits to know that this is a set amount that's coming in, and then they just have to apply once again. Thank you.
Interesting question. If anyone else? Councillor Gesselbrock.
Through the chair to the delegation, thank you very much for your presentation. I was just curious, actually, if you could pull up that slide of the decrease in cat population over the last few years.
Yeah, so this is the cat intake to the Nanaimo branch of the SPCA. So that would be people surrendering cats or stray cats, or, yeah, for the covered basically.
I imagine, having these cats spayed, one, there's less cats that are probably euthanized, and also I imagine the bird population is appreciative as well with less stray cats. And I'm bringing this up, I'm just curious about the idea of it being a line item, because I think it is of great importance to the city to keep our cat population low. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor. I think Councillor Thorpe has a suggestion.
Thank you, Your Worship. If it's appropriate through you, I'd like to suggest that we hear from staff on this regarding the possibility of a line item in future budgets, but also a look at where such a funding request could be funded from, if there is contingency money or if there's another source. Would it be appropriate, or do we need a motion to ask staff to come back to us on this?
Ms. Snellgrove?
So I would move then, if it's an appropriate time, that we ask staff to bring us back a report as soon as possible regarding Mr. Davis's request, options for funding, where that might come from, the term, the amount, and also a discussion regarding making it a line item for future. Is that
Secondary?
comprehensive enough?
Well done. Councillor Gesselbrock seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. The one question I have is sort of related to your motion is with regard to Councillor Armstrong's suggestion of having it over extended period. The only concern I have with that is we've got to be careful we don't use up the whole budget for requests that are extended over 3 years, because that leaves no flexibility for one-off opportunities for other things. So maybe a portion of that budget item would be for that specific purpose, and then the balance left the way it is currently.
Point noted, Councillor Turley. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm not sure I want to support the motion, and here's why. We've always given the SPCA this money, and it has always come out of Council Contingency Fund. And I'm wondering, do we need to burden staff with another report when they're going to come back and say that we should give them the $25,000 and it should come out of Council Contingency Funds? Just off the top of my head, I wouldn't hold staff to this quote, but like, what would a cost in staff time and dollars be for a report that Councillor Thorpe is suggesting?
Mr. Rudolph.
Your Worship, I'm new to this process with Nanaimo as well. It strikes me there's good questions being asked, and I'm not sure how applicable some of these questions are to other asks as well. It strikes me as slightly odd that we have systemized the use of a council contingency fund for what's essentially become a line item in our budget. So I think it would be useful for us to have the opportunity to do a little bit more research on this. I mean, there's concepts like fee for service, there's line items, there's a variety of opportunities, and I think we'd actually appreciate the opportunity to sort of take your feedback and look at it and come back to you with some of the options that Councillor Thorpe was suggesting. So it's a little bit of research, but it might be helpful in the concept of revisiting our fiscal policies and that type of thing. So I'd suggest it's a good use of time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong?
Yeah, and a follow-up to the motion. I would like to actually look at all of the grants that we give on a regular basis and make them line objects as well, because then we know exactly they're already built into the budget. And then we know what we will have in regards to Councillor Turley's spot, then you could have another, whether it be a contingency, whatever, for those frequent asks that come forward that are one-offs. But I think every year we get the same people coming forward, and I think it's not only is it, I wouldn't say waste of time, but I think when it's something that we think that's probably going to happen and that it's a good thing for our community, that it should be built right into the budget, and then it's there. And they know what they're working with. Thank you.
No further speakers. I was going to suggest that the motion, I think, is an appropriate one, and this is essentially a line item in the budget, and I'll certainly be supporting it. But I think it's pretty clear from council's questions around the table this morning, if I'm not reading council incorrectly that clearly, as Mr. Rudolph has pointed out to us in previous occasions, this is time for us to look at this whole policy in a much larger format, and I think staff hears the message and perhaps will proceed accordingly. So if there's no, Councillor Bonner.
And thank you, Councillor Armstrong, for that. It actually does raise the issues. There's a number of things that I know that we give out on a fairly regular basis that I would also like to see as line items. Perhaps that report can be a little bit more encompassing.
I don't hear anyone moving in a formal amendment to the motion, but I think the message is fairly clear, and unless Ms. Snellgroves gives me one of those looks that tells me we should have a much stronger motion, perhaps we can rely on the intelligence and ability of our capable city staff to respond to council's obvious requests for information.
So this motion is specific to the SBCA, but if the mover and seconder agree, it could be a friendly amendment to be encompassing for more grants.
Councillor Brown.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. The only thing I'm curious about is the timeline for this particular report, as it is so evolving to be a much more comprehensive ask. I'm just curious as if funds have ran out for this particular ask. I'm not saying that we immediately jump in and approve the ask. I'm just, when the staff could deliver this report also have implications for the delivery of this particular program?
Mr. Rudolph, please.
Worship, through to Councilor Brown, and actually all of council items we were just discussing, if the focus was on the SPCA, that's a quick process. If it's a broader, based on further agenda items, they may have a broader set of questions and issues that you might flag. That would be a little longer exercise and maybe that's a workshop topic for council, generally speaking, and sort of go through a lot of issues there. So that would take a little bit more time. So I think it might be preferable to have something very specific about this one, but also allow us a little latitude to put it in the context. And then I know there's going to be questions regarding the whole process around the grants and all that type of thing, and there's been a process, and we need to spend time with you through one of our workshops, fiscal workshops, to work our way through that. There's a fair amount of work attached to that side of it, but the SPCA side, we can certainly be back at the end of January or the next available Finance and Audit Committee with a report on that.
Councillor Thorpe.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, so my intent was specific to this request, and I think that's a fairly short and relatively easy report to generate, I hope. I don't disagree with the larger look at things, but I think that is with respect to a much bigger and more general and a different motion if required. So my intent is simply for this this topic, but I will say to this through you, Your Worship, to council, that it will not be my intent to react to any requests for funding without some type of staff report to base my decision on moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
No, said.
Councillor Gasselbrock. No, we're off. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Davis.
Happy holidays and in the new year, anyone who hasn't seen the new SPCA, it's actually a pretty good tour and see what we're doing. Thank you.
Next is item B. It's a delegation. Mike Scott, Director of the Nanaimo Pride Society, and Rick Dagg, Secretary of Nanaimo Pride Society, regarding the Nanaimo Pride Society's short and long-term goals. Gentlemen, good morning. Now, you know the timer isn't working this morning, but I'm going to keep watch.
Well, then I had pared my presentation down, I'm trying to adjust for that.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Nanaimo Pride Society, Your Worship, I'd like to thank you and through you, the council, for the opportunity to talk with you this morning. The Nanaimo Pride Society, NPS, is a non-profit registered society in British Columbia, completely volunteer-based, whose focus is on providing safe spaces and resources to all the communities that fall under the LGBTQ2 or queer umbrella. NPS works towards these goals by educating our allies about the histories of our people with historical and existing challenges we face. We organize events for the Rainbow community members to meet, discuss common issues, and socialize. MPS is an advocate for our communities, speaking for our Rainbow communities, and for members unable to speak for themselves. Since the 80s, there have been many positive changes in Canada regarding the societal understanding of the queer communities. We now have legal marriage, spousal benefit recognition, and legal protections on human rights legislation, as well as improved social understanding and acceptance of the values of our communities. But there is still a long road ahead of us. Some members of the community are struggling to move forward, such as our two-spirited, people of color, and trans community members. Our youth have a much higher rate of homelessness and suicide than non-queer and gender-conforming youth. Recently, there's been a resurgence of attacks within Canada and the US on the acceptance of rights we have struggled to achieve over the past decades. Globally, our community members are being denied basic human rights, tortured and murdered, showing a level of misunderstanding and hatred still directed at our Rainbow families. The first Pride March / parade in Nanaimo was in 1997, with some very brave people walking with banners and flags. The next Pride Parade was not held until June 2016. Nanaimo showed its support in 2016 with a large, colorful, noisy parade with thousands of people lining the parade route through downtown Nanaimo cheering. Most of these onlookers followed the parade into Maffeo Sutton Park and went to the Pride Festival. Pride Week was being very well supported in 2017 and 2018. The Nanaimo Pride Society is now making plans for another week of activities for 2019. With an estimated attendance of 10,000 plus people in 2016 and numbers increasing yearly, the annual Pride Parade and Festival have become one of the premier events for Nanaimo. Pride Week draws visitors from across Vancouver Island, as well as the mainland, and is promoted as the kickoff to Pride, as we are the first Pride celebration in BC. The revenue generated by these gatherings are just substantial, from hotel rooms, restaurants, vehicle rentals, etc. It also showcases the beautiful place we live in and shows how welcoming a community we are, increasing the appeal and marketability of Nanaimo. MPS has had a positive relationship with Council since we first approached the city in 2016, when the city agreed to paint and maintain the two Pride crosswalks on Commercial and Bastion. In 2017, the council agreed to add 2 new crosswalks to the existing 2 to complete the intersection. Council also agreed that the city would take responsibility for supplying, installing, and removing all required signage and barricades needed for staging the Pride Parade. In 2018, council agreed to repaint the crosswalks as needed, and again took responsibility for the required Pride Parade barricades and signage. MPS is here today to make some requests to help us achieve our short and long-term goals. We feel that not only will this be invaluable for the local queer community, but also very beneficial for the city of Nanaimo. The partnership between MPS and Nanaimo City Council would demonstrate that persons of all walks of life are welcome in Nanaimo. The spirit of pride, after all, is inclusivity. MPS is asking for a multi-year agreement for the following. The city of Nanaimo take ownership again of maintaining and retaining as needed the Pride crosswalk and Commercial Bastion. This is something that our communities nationally and internationally value as a visible sign of support for our communities. The city of Nanaimo take ownership again of supplying, installing, and removing all required barricades and signage on the Pride Parade route. The city of Nanaimo grant permission for a standing reservation of Maffeo Sutton Park for the second Sunday of every June to assist us in planning the Pride Festival moving forward. The cost to stage the Pride Week has averaged about $20,000, with costs rising each year. MPS has numerous fundraisers and reaches out to businesses and groups in the community for support and grants to help cover the cost. To help ensure the long-term viability of Nanaimo Pride Week and allow MPS to focus on some of the other urgent needs in our community, we are asking for an annual grant of $10,000 to help ensure the future and growth of Nanaimo Pride Week. Council support would be a strong, positive statement about council and the city of Nanaimo about inclusion of all. Currently, there is no place in our community to meet and support each other. MPS would appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with the city of Nanaimo on the establishment of an adequate building space centrally located that can be used as a permanent central resource and social space for the LGBTQ and community. The idea would be to model these on similar centers in Vancouver and Victoria. If City Council decides to re-establish advisory committees, MPS would be very interested to be part of any advisory committee that addresses our Rainbow community issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councillor Armstrong.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Dagg and Mr. Scott, for being here. I would like to make the same motion that Councillor Thorpe did. However, I'm hesitant to right now just because I think we need to have a broader discussion with council. I totally support that. I just don't know if I can support a line object right now until because otherwise we're going to be doing this for every single person that comes forward. So it's not that I don't support you to make that exact motion. I would certainly, I will be supporting it, but I would like to give our staff time to see the impact it's going to have. And I have one further question, if I may.
Please.
And I know we've had this talk before, Rick. It's about the sidewalks, the maintenance. Would there be any, and I know after you guys explained to me the importance of the marked sidewalks, but I've still been thinking about the banners around light poles, which I think would be less maintenance, more visible. Is there any thoughts around that, or is that just me out in left base?
Thank you for asking that, Councilor Armstrong. That is something that the Nanaimo Place Society is looking at currently. We're looking at building a banner supply over a number of years, starting this year. So we're already investigating the cost and supply options and what those banners would actually look like. We're looking currently at hopefully supplying them for Pride 2019 along commercial and then through the festival segment.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Scott and Mr. Dagg. The question I have is regarding the annual grant of $10,000, and that is in addition to the expenses involved in the crosswalks and parade, et cetera?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Martman.
Thank you. Through the chair. As a speaker at the 1997 First Pride, definitely supportive of the community. And I'm wondering, did you apply for any grants last year? Because I didn't see it.
Are you talking about for Pride 2019?
For 2019, did you go to any of the advisory committees, or I'm not sure how the applications worked last year?
2017 and 2018, MPS did receive a grant through the downtown neighborhood renovations program. Unfortunately, this year, we did not get our grant request in time, and it has not been included from what I saw on the agenda for this year's grants.
Okay, thank you. And I concur with Councillor Armstrong. This is something that we would need to look at and revisit those things that maybe should be ongoing and permanent line items. So I'm sure Council will probably look at taking this up for review. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Through you to the delegation, thank you for the work you do in our community. I do have a question about your late grant application. It was for the amount of $7,500. The $10,000 that you're looking to have embedded as an annual contribution to your organization, would that $10,000 cover this $7,500 ask? Is this Pride Week specific? Okay, and you just weren't able to get it in on time?
Correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you for the, through to the delegation. Just a couple comments and then I think a question. With respect to the permanent space, I understand from staff that we are doing a facilities review as part of our recreation master plan update or renewal, and so I think that might be a wonderful opportunity to have that discussion about a space and what that might look like and how it can fit into the greater scope of things, because something I heard through the campaign, and I think even at one of our meetings this week, was some comments around not enough for affordable space, et cetera. So, and that was the suggestion of Mr. Harding at the time, so I think it applies here as well. Obviously, our committee structures are on hold, but I have heard rumblings about reviewing those committees, and I think it's a discussion that council is having, and again, timely to present on that, because now it's in our minds, and as we review our committees or how that unfolds, it's another thing for us to consider. But then I think there's some items here that maybe are tied up in a greater conversation about line items with respect to grants. But question through to staff is, with the existing sidewalks, are those committed to have annual maintenance of?
Crosswalks or sidewalks?
Sorry, crosswalk on Commercial and Bastion.
It's a lot of money.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Councillor Brown's question, we've committed to doing some ongoing maintenance with the double crosswalks or the quadruple crosswalks at Bastion and Commercial. it's been challenging over the last couple of years to find somebody to do that paint. I think we've got a solution for this year. There's also, the challenge lies where we're dealing with brick. So we'd like to, over the next 2 or 3 years, try to keep those crosswalks alive as they are. Hopefully touch them up this year and keep them going. We've, with a view to in about 3 years, rebuilding the crosswalk there. And we've been in discussions with Nanaimo Pride to perhaps have a permanent crosswalk, rainbow crosswalk at Museum Way, just outside here. This is a little bit out of the traffic. It's asphalt, so we can use thermoplastic. It'll stay a lot better and brighter. So that's yeah, there you go.
Thank you, Worship. I just have a couple more comments. Through you to Mr. Sims, with the removing and installation of barricades, is that something that the municipality would do with any events permit?
No. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We have 5 annual events that we have funding for. We just need to, including the Pride Parade, but we're also working on an option or a bit of a policy or discussion paper on how do we handle other events that may come forward that need city support. So currently we provide for barricades, traffic control, and sort of cleanup after the parade for, as I say, 5 events.
And just sort of the last item is the standing reservation of Maffeo Sutton Park. In our 2019 budget, we did approve, or in principle, we have approval for an events coordinator. And so, just thinking, and not just speaking for myself, not for council, we might be in a better position to sort of consider those requests once the event coordinator is established and we have a better process for handling such things.
Thank you, Councillor Brown. Councillor Armstrong,
Yeah, I would actually like to make a motion at this time.
please.
I'd like to make a motion for a staff report in order for recommendation as to the support of the $10,000 request from the delegation.
Is there a seconder? Councillor Bonner. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Councillor Gasselbrock, you're off the list, right?
I just want to say thank you, yeah, please, through the chair to the delegation, thank you very much for all your work. The Nanaimo Pride Society is a super important part of our community, and we're a much stronger, healthier community if we're diverse and inclusive, and we still actively need to work on changing the culture. So thank you for this, and look forward to the next parade. As a parade connoisseur, it's awesome having 10,000 people out there with colors, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate your attendance this morning. Thank you. And I mean no disrespect, but we've now spent 40 minutes on 2 small financial items. I think there's a lesson for council. The smaller the expenditure, the larger the discussion. Thank you, gentlemen. If we might move on to something less contentious, consent items. I see none on the agenda. Correct, Ms. Smelgrove? Thank you.
Your worship,
Councillor Bonner.
could we pull one out, please?
There is none.
Oh, sorry, I'm in the wrong part of the agenda.
Yes, you are, but thank you. It's always good to hear from you. Item 7.
Ouch.
Actually, we're in the consent items, correct?
Yes, there are no consent items. I think you're looking at yesterday's agenda, sorry.
Maybe.
I'll give you a minute, though.
No, quite all right. I'll look at it here.
It's in the grants. You probably want to order it. It's not a consent item. It's under good.
Unless I hear anything further, I think we can now proceed to reports. The first, item A, quarterly purchasing report, single and sole source, instance of non-compliant compliance purchases and purchases in excess of $250,000. Ms. Mercer, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is to provide the committee with information on sole source and single submission purchases, as well as compliance with our procurement policy. And our policy requires us to report to the committee every quarter. So just to kind of briefly go through the report, Appendix 1 outlines the sole and single source purchases, and Appendix 2 outlines our purchases that we've made over 250, and there have been no instances of non-compliance in the first 9 months of the year.
Very good. Can I have a motion that the report, as well as set out in the agenda, be received?
I'll move the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Turley seconding. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. The next, capital project results for the 9 months ending September 30th, 2018. Ms. Mercer again, please.
And the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with a summary of the status of all our 2018 capital projects. So the projects are broken down into 4 status categories: completed and statutorily or substantially complete, in progress, not started, and delayed or other. The total capital budget for the year was approximately 81 million. We've spent or committed to date approximately 38, and the funds available remaining are about 43 million. Attachment 1 gives a brief outline of any of the projects that were over, had $1 million variance, and explains the reasons why that there is a variance of that. And then Attachment 2 gives a full listing of all the projects and where their status lies.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Hearing none, can I have a motion to receive information? Councillor Turley, seconded Councillor Brown. Any discussion? Councillor Martman.
Through the chair, I just had one question. Under the waterfront walkway, it says the funding agreement for this grant has not been signed as the city still has several outstanding conditions that need to be met by March 31st. I was looking for some clarification.
Please, Ms. Mercer.
So with the, we've been awarded the grant, but we have to meet certain criteria, and based on where we are at with that project, we still need to satisfy some of those criteria. So we have, I believe, until March 31st, and then to have those funds released to the city. And I can perhaps...
Oh, that doesn't help me.
Okay, just one.
Technology. Pull it up in a little thing in your hand.
We will get you that information.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Worship, if I could just...
Please, Mr. Rudolph.
Space while we're waiting for that information, I'll just remind council that at your scheduled committee of the whole meeting on Monday, there will be a open and full briefing on the status of the waterfront walkway project. So that'll be an opportunity to unpack all of the issues around this and get a full briefing in addition to the information you're receiving.
Thank you very much. You've created
a few
great
things, yeah,
reduction in
there's
my
a,
list.
there's a
I'm very
multitude of
pleased with
things.
that. Ms. Mercer.
There's a multitude of
wait
things that are kind of, we would like to, as Mr. Rudolph said, unpack for you. Part of it is there's licenses and leases that have to be, secured and things like that, that we are currently working on, but we haven't secured them yet. And we will, like Mr. Rudolph said, there will be a report coming to you with a full briefing on the waterfront walkway.
Councillor Martman, would
That's
that be
fine.
satisfactory?
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well raised. Good. Any further questions? I've called for the vote. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Item C, operating results for the 9 months ending September 30th, 2018. Again, Ms. Mercer, you're a busy person this morning.
I'm a busy lady these days, yeah. This report provides the committee with an update of what our expected surplus is at the end of December 31st, based on our operating results to September 30th. So right now, we are expecting an estimated surplus of all 3 funds, that's water, sewer, and general, of 4.2 million. Of that, general makes up approximately 2.2 million, and that's where, from general taxation, that impacts that, whereas water and sewer, those are from user fees. So sewer, we're expecting a $544,000 surplus, and water, we're expecting a $2.7 million surplus. Just a brief outline of the report. Attachment 1 gives a brief description of anything that has a variance of over $100,000, and Attachment 2 gives you a full organizational view of where all the departments. Some of the drivers for the general surplus of 2.2, the RCMP contract is just over $1 million, we're estimating, and building inspection and business license revenues are up about 725. So those are our biggest drivers of the surplus for that. The other large one is water, and which is 2.7 million. And the Lance'ville water connection fee that we had, we didn't budget for that, but we got that money this year, and that accounts for about 1.3 million of that $2.7 million surplus. And we're expecting water user fees to be up just over $800,000. Water is a hard one to predict for budget because there are many different factors that come into that, such as weather and, you know, if it's a dry year, more watering, if it's a wet year, less. So we budget conservatively, so we are expecting just over $800,000 in increased water fees. And yeah, so that's the gist of that report.
Thank you, Ms. Mercer. Nothing brings a smile to a council's face more than a surplus. Any questions? Motion to, Councillor Marmon.
Oh, sorry. Never mind.
All right. I don't want to discourage discussion this morning with my comments about smaller items and longer agendas, but motion to...
Recommendation, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Thorpe. Seconded, Councillor Armstrong. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? None opposed? Thank you. Item D, council expenses for the 9 months ending September 30th, 2018. Again, Ms. Mercer, please.
Thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this report is just to give an update of where our previous councillors' spending has been, because as this report is at September 30th, it only includes our previous council. The December 31st will include any spending that all of you have had. And again, this is just for information.
Any questions for Ms. Mercer?
Thank you, Your Worship.
Councillor Bonner.
Yeah, through you to staff. I noticed that on a lot of the expenses, the conferences were over budget. Is that something that we should be looking at adjusting for future years?
Ms. Mercer?
Through Your Worship, to Councillor Bonner. Yes, that is something we're looking at. It was kind of an arbitrary allocation, so we will be looking at that to make sure it's appropriately allocated. We look at it as an overall budget too, so if you, as long as you're within your total, that's fine, but we will be looking at that because it does look odd.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Motion? Councillor Turley?
Second.
Seconded, Councillor Hemmons. All those in, any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you. Item E, the Social Planning Grants 2019 recommendations.
Your Worship, may I
Yes.
interrupt? Sorry. I have to declare a conflict of interest on this one. And in my defense, I was working on the right agenda, but I don't have my glasses, so I read it wrong. And I will take this opportunity to go get them. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Snellgrove.
Or Mr. Councillor Bonner leaves, if he could just declare the reason why he has a conflict, I would like to record that in a minute.
Sure, I am.
Yes, if you could take your seat and lean in, please.
Thank you. I sit on the board of directors of one of the organizations that will be getting a grant, hopefully. I'm not going to talk on it. So I sit on one, I'm the board of directors. Forget that last one.
Well said. Thank you very much. Note that Councillor Bonner has excused himself from the meeting. So this is Mr. Lindsay. Good morning.
Morning. Thank you, Your Worship. We have a series of reports for you this morning for the allocation of your 2019 grants. The first report deals with your social planning grants, and these are both community vitality and social response grants. There's $85,000 in the budget for 2019. The grants have been recommended by staff as outlined in the report, and these are programs that will address social issues affecting our community. I would note that for all of these reports, we have the file managers with us this morning in the audience, so if there's specific questions about any of these reports, we'll do our best to answer them.
Councillor Turley.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to the staff. I'm unfamiliar with what they do, the Solaire Community Group. Can anybody provide information on that?
Maybe I'll ask Mr. Horn to come forward and give an update.
Councillor Hemmons.
Sorry, is Mr. Horn going to?
Sorry, all right, well, sorry. Jumping ahead, Mr. Horn, forgive me.
So the Solaire Community Group is a neighborhood association that, of course, is Solaire, and what they intend to do is create a seating area for the community. They have a piece of public land in their subdivision, and it's never been utilized, and the group wants to clean it up, put a sitting area there, and have it be a neighborhood amenity for themselves. So it's as simple as that.
That clarifies. When I saw a gathering, I thought maybe they were going to have a barbecue or something.
Oh, they might actually barbecue there too, but yeah.
Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Briefly, typically these grants are decided upon at a committee level, so there's, no, not these ones. Sorry, I'm getting an answer from a nodding head. So my question is that I would like to understand if there's a difference this year because the committees are on hold as to how these have been selected, and will that change next year?
Mr. Lindsay.
Your Worship, maybe I'll start and Mr. Horn can jump in with more detail, but I would say it's changed a number of times over recent years on how we deal with grants, from everything from a grants committee to bringing recommendations forward to separate committees to simply having staff provide review and recommendation. So last year and this year, it's been staff, primarily with these grants, it's been staff's review, bringing them directly to the Finance and Audit Committee. As for moving forward, that would really be up to council on how you want to apply your grants, and I think it would be included in your discussion on how you want to look at committees.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gusselbrock.
Just a point of clarification through the chair. I'm just curious, does each sort of like item A we discuss and then B, or are we discussing the whole, every single item? Because I do have questions, but something that's on item D.
If it's in item E, now's the time for that discussion.
Okay. Through the chair to staff, I'm just got a question, and it might be best answered by Mr. Horn, but regarding the grant for the Homelessness Coalition, just trying to spot it here. But I'm curious in that grant.
I think you're.
It's United Way.
Yes.
It's for the United Way, the Homelessness Coalition. Thank you. Yeah. I'm curious. There was in the report for the report to end homelessness, the strategic plan. It asks for a part-time position to help coordinate the different service groups around homelessness. And I'm just curious if any portion of that grant is going towards that position, or what were the different aspects of that? The coordinator, yeah.
Yes, so thanks, and then through the chair to Councillor Gusselbrecht. What I would say is that yes, the coalition has been in place for about 14 or 15 years now, and it's always been a group that's run on the basis of people coming together and just doing the work. But the file's getting bigger and more complicated. The amount of money that comes from the federal government is growing, and so we're at the point where that group needs some support in order to function effectively and to do the work they need to do. So this grant request from the United Way, who are the community entity, the holders of the federal dollars that manage the federal money, They're asking for additional dollars to resource that committee more effectively, and that'll be a contract position through the United Way that would support the work of the coalition to address homelessness in Nanaimo. So it is certainly aimed at that grant request.
All right, through the chair, yeah, just clarify, so that is for that coordinator position that was outlined in the strategy?
Yes.
Excellent. I've been feeling anxious about that, and I'm glad it's being resourced, so thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you, Chair, through you to Mr. Horn. In follow-up, will this be the full amount for the coordinator? So you're looking at very part-time, or will
Yes.
other funds be brought in?
No, it'll be a part-time role.
Okay.
Yeah,
All right,
absolutely.
thank you.
Councillor Brown, your mic is on, but you're not asking a question, I take it? Good.
I got no light on.
Just, Councillor Armstrong, please.
I'd like to make a motion to accept the report and do the allocations as outlined by the staff report.
The seconder, Councillor Thorpe. This is with respect to item E. And item E, which includes all of these grants, is set out, just so we're all clear. Any discussion? All those in favor? Contrary, motion carried. Thank you. I am not sure that Councillor Bonner has any further issues, so you can wait for a minute. Ms. Snellgrove is just looking for you out the other door.
Your Worship,
If this counts as a recess, Councillor Turley, just wait, we'll wait till Councillor Bonner's seated, sorry. All right, if we can proceed. Councillor Turley.
with regard to the next item, the Culture and Heritage Grant, my wife is on the board of the Vancouver Island Symphony, so I'm assuming I need to step out.
It's your decision. It's up to you.
Mr. Rudolph's going to make a comment.
The protocol for declaring a conflict of interest is up to the subject member of council. So it's at your discretion whether you feel you need to declare that and not seek guidance from the chair or the members of council. So that would be your decision on that. Whether you feel it's direct, pecuniary, subjective, or otherwise. So it's certainly your
So probably I'd be smart if I went out, so, okay, thank you.
I think, Councillor Turley, that it's always best to be on the safe side, and I appreciate your concern for this. Thank you very much.
Coffee shop, because you might be a while.
Get me a coffee, Jim.
So with respect to item F, Culture and Heritage Grant Recommendations 2019, Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. As you've mentioned, this, the grants for our operating grants for our culture and heritage and our project grants for 2019, the staff's recommendations are outlined in the report. I would note that unlike the other applications or the other reports you've had before you this morning, this application is actually just that council received the report with the final decision coming forward to the January 14th council meeting. And the reason that it's like this is because we're following a policy on, typically we'd be bringing this report forward to the first time to Finance and Audit Committee, and then that would give time for the organizations to become aware of what their recommended grants are, and it gives them time to appeal those decisions through to council. So this is really an information report with the final decision coming to you in mid-January.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lindsay. Councillor Thorpe.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Lindsay. First of all, a comment following up on Councillor Hemmons' question earlier. There's so many of these grant applications, and it's a very, very time-consuming process and labor-intensive, and I want to credit staff for the work that they've put into this, examining the criteria, making sure that each organization is treated fairly. This used to be done through our various committees, whether it was Grants Advisory or Parks and Recreation or Culture and Heritage, and those were committee recommendations that came forward. And then that process changed and it got put onto staff, as Mr. Lindsay said, the last couple of years. So a lot of staff time and effort has gone into this. And it's something that I think we do as a council need to at least talk about again. My question, Mr. Lindsay, is as part of that process, I know there's a requirement that organizations following their event submit a report to justify their expenses, And unless they do that, they don't qualify the following year. So I would just like assurance that that is being followed and that we have in fact received the necessary documentation. For many of these groups, also the ones in item G coming up on the downtown event grants, which used to, I think, mainly covered through DNBIA, and also the travel assistance grants that Parks and Rec looked after. I guess what I'm asking is a simple assurance that process has been followed.
Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through to Councillor Thorpe. On your first point, I just would note that Chris Barfoot's with us here in the audience, and as you mentioned, staff take on this role. So Mr. Barfoot's been the team lead on this project, and he can answer specific questions. What I would say in general is that yes, the process has been followed. There, of course, are events that are still late in the season. So they may not yet have been completed or might not have yet in their final reports to us. But our experience is that we've had good compliance with our requirements, yes.
Good, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Just point of order, could we get the motion on the floor? No, well, it's a receive for information, right?
I was just going to make the motion.
Okay. I thought that's what we were doing.
Do you want to make the motion?
Councillor Hemmons.
Okay, thank you. Just a comment, not a question, and I just want to echo Councillor Thorpe as a citizen member on one of the committees that a number of these grants would have come through to. I know of a little bit of pushback in the community from staff being taking on the role of selecting these, and I just want to offer my gratitude for the work that was done and the professionalism with which that pushback was handled. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons. Mr. Lindsay.
Sorry, Your Worship, something I intended to outline when I introduced the report. I just want to make sure that all council is aware. I know it's stated in the report, but there are 5 applications in here that we're recommending be acknowledged as 3-year grants. So those are identified, the ones with asterisks, so the Crimson Coast Society, the Conservatory of Music, Theatre One, Vancouver Island Symphony, and Western Edge. So those are identified in the report, but I just want to make sure council is clear about that.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong.
Would like to make a motion to get it onto the floor for debate.
And
then have
the
a
motion
question.
to receive. Seconded. Second, Councillor Thorpe. On to discussion. Councillor Armstrong.
I struggle with the 3 years. I don't think it's fair to the other people that you know, we're isolating some groups that can do it, can't, until we have our review. I think we should be doing the same for all people that are applying. And then once we have our decisions made, then we can go that route. So I don't know if I can support 3 years at this point, because I think other people would have asked for the same 3 years if they would have known that was available to them. Thank you.
Thank you. A question arising out of this, Mr. Rudolph or Ms. Mercer or Mr. Lindsay. This is to simply receive, so we are not actually approving it at this stage. I appreciate Councillor Armstrong's concerns, quite legitimate, but this will be back before council for approval with respect to the length of the grant. Okay.
For clarification, just because I think that's something that you were looking for, like council input, that'll be a concern I'll have, so that you said that they need to know if they're going to have our support. I don't think I can support 3 years unless everybody else has that same opportunity, like we just heard from Mr. Davis here seeking the same thing, Mr. Dagg and Mr. Lippitt seeking the same thing, so I really struggle with that at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. Well stated. Councillor Gesselbrock.
Just a question around the 3-year grants through the chair to staff. Is that the total for the 3 years, the number that's beside or is that each year they get that amount?
To Your Worship, that is the amount each year.
Okay. And just to follow up on the discussion around the 3-year grants, I know that's something that came up during the campaign, was some of these organizations needing a longer commitment so that they can leverage the grant for provincial and federal granting. And so I think that's an important discussion to have, because I know by doing that we can get more money from other areas for our community. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Gesselbrock. I think what this tells us is that we all need to learn a little bit more about the process and be satisfied, and it's wonderful to see council asking these questions to make sure that we do understand what we're doing with people's money. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. The next would be item G. Councillor Bonner.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to have to declare a conflict on this one because I actually do business with many of these groups, and they might get hired. So,
Councillor Bonner, your commitment to integrity is appreciated.
Take your glasses.
I'm going to leave them there, so I don't forget.
He really went to the coffee shop. As long as he brings me a coffee.
He'll be found wandering somewhere.
Terrible.
Gary O'Brien.
This motion is to approve.
Jim, I have your back. I want you to.
The other one, I have your back. This one's approved.
I would
I
remind
already
members
have
of council, we're
questions
still
about these
actively in a
two.
meeting. Councillor
Yeah.
Martman, do you have a question?
I was going to make a motion so we could begin discussion.
Thank you. We'll wait till Ms. Snell. Yes?
Is it being introduced?
Are we in a position to proceed now? Yes. So item G, 2019 downtown event grant recommendations. Mr. Lindsay.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is our final report for grants for 2019. As you mentioned, the downtown event grant recommendations. This is the 2019 will be the third year that the city's been offering this program. It started when the DNBIA discontinued their work in the downtown, and the grants were seen as an opportunity to continue to support events that attract visitors and residents to our downtown. So as outlined in the report, we have $150,000, and staff are recommending that it be allocated to the various events as outlined in your agenda.
Thank you very much. Councillor Martman, you want to make the motion to approve?
Yes, so motion that council approve the 2019 downtown event grant recommendations of $150,000 as follows.
And we have a seconder, Councillor Gesselbrock. Any
No.
discussion?
Yes.
Councillor Martman.
I'm wondering through the chair to staff how the decision came about that the Mid-Island Métis Nation received $6,750, but Gingerbread Homes with Gallant Homes is $7,525.
Your Worship, maybe I'll invite Mr. Barfoot to come forward if he can speak in more detail to those.
Mr. Barfoot, good morning.
Good morning. Your Worship, to Councillor. The ask groups will ask a certain amount, and then the funds are allocated based on their criteria of the 35% cap of their overall budget. So the way the funds are distributed, we look at how much money is available, what the asks are from each organization, and then allocate the funds to there. So for example, the Mid-Island Métis Association, their request was less than the Gallant Homes project. So based on that and what funds are available and to the impact of those events, those funds are allocated or recommended for allocation.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Armstrong, you may not wish to leave, Mr. Barfoot.
No, he can go. I just want to make a general comment that I think this is, I will approve this because it's not the final approval, obviously, it's got to go before council. But I think this is something that we have to have at the bigger discussion that Mr. Rudolph will be bringing forward to us around committees, around the grants, because I think there's a lot of concerns around this. So in principle, I'll approve it, but you know, I'm looking forward to having that more robust discussion on how we're doing this on the 7th.
In fairness, Councillor Armstrong.
But it still has to go to council for final approval, doesn't it?
No, this is the, Mr. Rudolph will
Oh,
correct
is
me,
it a
Mr.
special
Lindsay.
council? Then I can't approve. I think it's too soon without having the fulsome review and discussion that, could we have some clarification on that? Because normally finance and audit can only do the recommendation, then it goes to the council for the final approval.
So, yeah, Your Worship, maybe I can help clarify, and if I've confused it on the last item, I apologize, but as council is sitting as council this morning, not the Finance and Audit Committee meeting, your recommendations in general are final, or your decisions are final, with the exception of the one that I pulled out, the previous item, which is item F, because our policy specifically says there needs to be a time from the time that it's introduced to council at your typically at a finance and audit committee until final decisions made. So that's the one exception to the rule. The other reports, including item G here, this would be council's final recommendation.
Thank you. I forgot that we switched the meeting. I appreciate that. But I'm still struggling with all this because we're not doing a consistent application of policies to me, and I really struggle with it. I know staff is doing the best that they can on it, and I understand we have to do that, but I'm just struggling that our systems are not fair to different groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. Councillor Turley.
Yeah, I'm probably out of order here, but...
I will let you know.
No, I have nothing to do with that. So my question is, I see in 3 different locations, Crimson Coast Dance Society is applied for, and I wasn't here to hear what the result of the last one was, but there's a note here on page 77 that says organizations will not be eligible for operating grant funding if they have received other funding assistance through the city of Nanaimo. Is that a problem with the...
Mr. Lindsay, please.
Maybe I can ask Mr. Barfoot to come forward and speak to that specific application, because I know we had a number of applications that applied in different streams. So in some streams, they might get 0, but because they were funded through other ways. So maybe on this specific one, Mr. Barfoot can shed some additional light on that.
Mr. Barfoot, please.
So, Worship, to Councillor Armstrong, that's a very good question, and the programs do, in some sense, or sorry, Councillor Turley, in some instance, do conflict each other. The Culture and Heritage grants do state that groups are ineligible to apply for funding through other sources if they're receiving funding. Based on the timing of these, at this point, no grants have been approved. So we don't know which way your council's decisions will go. With that, there is special circumstance grants in the projects that groups that receive operating funding in Culture and Heritage are eligible for project funding if they meet 2 criteria, which would be collaborations and partnerships. So that's one example where you'll find that instance may happen. The Downtown Event Fund, in their criteria that's laid out in that program, doesn't have that language in there. It does have language in there that groups can apply up to 75% of their overall budget through city sources, but the cap on that program is 35%, which leads to the fact that groups can, in a sense, apply for other city sources of funding.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Hemmons.
Thank you. Through you, probably to Mr. Barfoot. Just some generic questions.
Yeah.
So this is $150,000 in total. Do we know how much the DNBIA spent on the, I'm trying to get a comparison of, now we have an envelope of funds set aside for these, but we used to partner or provide funds to the DNBIA. So is there a vast difference? Is it about the same? And it's okay if you can't answer that. I realize it's
there was an increase to $150,000 last year. There was an increase made to that program, based on the subscription and the call from the community that the amount that was allocated was not achieving what that fund was set out to do. So council increased that last year so that we can meet some of those needs of the groups that were trying to do that revitalization and that community impact into the downtown core.
Great, thank you. And a couple more, if I may. So the Pride Society didn't get their application in on time, and then they've come to us now to request funding over and above what they, or more than what they would have applied for. So have we effectively created a bit of an appeal process here where folks can come and speak to council directly if they don't like the answer or where they didn't get it in on time?
So depending on the stream that groups, Councillor Hemmons, what stream of funding those groups are applying for, the Culture and Heritage grant process does have a 10-day appeal process, and that's why that one report is for information at this point, so that we can go back to those groups and notify them typically what's being recommended from finance and audit up to council. So we'll go back at this point and notify those groups to allow them to have that 10-day appeal process. The Downtown Event Revitalization Fund does not have an appeal process currently in place. So No.
Okay, thank you very much.
Your worship, can I just add to I think, to follow up on the question, if council, for example, decided today that you wanted to add a program into this list, unless you increase the budget, it would mean that we would have to go back and redistribute the funds amongst the other groups. But that is ultimately a decision that council can make.
Thank you, Councillor Hemmons. Councillor Armstrong.
For you, Mr. Barford, I'm assuming that they need an answer sooner than later, correct?
Specifically
All these people, right? Like, would we have time to delay till we have our more fulsome discussion on, I'm going to refer to Mr. Rudolph for the date?
Mr. Rudolph.
Worship, working a little on the go here. I was thinking in advance of the 14th, again, we're going to have a council planning workshop next week to schedule these things, but there would be one special committee of the whole meeting on January 7th, which would provide an opportunity to go through the policies system on this type of thing in advance of your decision making on the 14th. So there's a possibility, if you choose to allocate that time during that meeting for that purpose, we could just bring additional information to that committee of the whole, or we could just defer the whole matter to the next council meeting in the first one in January, which is the 14th. So again, part of our committee of the whole next week is to have a planning session for priority topics and in what sequence. And right now, everything is a priority. So we need to find a way to get through that.
Thank you, Mr. Rudolph.
I'm still struggling. Sorry. I just think that it's like we're not applying our policies fairly to all the different groups, so. But I know staff has done a great job, and I also know that these people need to move on with their events. So I think perhaps I'm going to have to vote in favor this year, and then we'll look at what happens for next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Armstrong. I think you've raised a concern that many councillors feel. Councillor Turley.
Yes, Your Worship. Just for informational purposes, if anybody has questions regarding the downtown Nanaimo BIA, I have sources. Given some of my previous volunteer activities. So I don't want to explain everything right now, but I can if you have questions about finances with regard to that, I can certainly provide information. So.
Thank
and
you
how
very
it worked.
Thank you very much, Councillor Turley. Councillor Thorpe.
I thought he was going to make us an offer we couldn't refuse. Oh, dear. Thank you, Your Worship. On this general topic, and I will support the motion that's on the floor, I think we're playing catch-up here, and I think we have to rely on the expertise and professionalism of our staff that have gone through all of these applications. A very tough job, as I indicated earlier, to try and be fair. And again, it's a process that has changed drastically over the past 2 or 3 years, and we're still trying to fit it together. And to one of Councillor Turley's earlier points about groups applying from more than one stream, that, just for the benefit of council, was one of the reasons that the Finance and Audit Committee was created, to deal in theory with all funding requests. But as Mr. Barfoot indicated, there are always exceptions where organizations in some cases are able to access funding from a separate stream. So it's not one size fits all, but that was the intent of the Finance and Audit Committee. The various committees that used to take care of this funding were disbanded, and staff has taken on this job. So I think for this year we have to rely, as I said, on their expertise, and if we want to re-examine our whole process, then we can do that. But I will say that my observation is that there have been strict criteria and fair criteria applied to all of these streams, and staff are very cognizant of that and make sure that the criteria is applicable before they decide on their recommendations for funding. So I have confidence in what we have in front of us, and again, I'm not against an examination of where we go in the future, but I think for now we should move on. Thank you.
Councillor Martman.
Thank you. I'm going to support the motion that I made, But I will really encourage us, and I think as a member of SPAC for 8 years, I was working when we had very vibrant conversations on determining grants. And I would really like to see us explore that this go back to a committee level where we have citizens that help to make this decision and take the workload away from staff. Thank you.
Thank you. If no other members of council want to comment, I just want to express that I share the concerns that have been raised by many councillors, but I think Councillor Thorpe put it best this morning in terms of the work that staff has had to do and the processes that by which they've arrived at these recommendations. So if there's no further discussion, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Item H, Travel Assistance Grant, Nanaimo Squash Club. Mr. Harding, good morning.
Good morning. Good morning, Your Worship. Am I on?
You're not on yet. Tap it again. Yes, you are.
There we go. Good morning. We have three small travel assistant grants in front of you. I don't know if you want to deal with all three of them at the same time. If you want me to give some background on this grant.
I think we'll deal with them in order. There are separate items on the agenda, please. So item H, this is the squash club.
Correct. So there's a, actually just noticed there's a, we have to change the recommendation on part. It says finance and audit still on there, but it is that the council recommend or council approve the request for Nanaimo Squash Club and Travel Assistant Grant for $100.
Can I have a motion, please? Can I have a seconder? We're not really going to debate this, are we? I'm calling the question. All those in favor, contrary, motion carried. Thank you. Item I, the Travel Assistance Grant, Southside Minor Baseball. Now we're talking real money.
Again, as this was initially a finance and audit, the recommendation is for finance and audit committee, but really it's council, as council can be here. That council approved the request from the Southside Minor Football Association for a travel assistant grant in an amount of $1,000 for 25 players to attend the BCCFA Provincial Championship held this year in Coquitlam, BC.
So moved, seconded, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? Councillor Turley?
Yes, I just have a question with regard to the timing of the international travel. It appears to have happened both cases this year. So was that something that came from
Yes, yeah. So every year we have $7,500 for this program, and again, it's for sports and cultural groups, and it's a first-come, first-served basis. Sometimes events happen, and then they come in application afterwards, or they'll try to get them before. And then whenever we can get them to council or finance and audit committee meeting.
So it's not something that we're looking at for the coming?
No, Your Worship, sorry to Mr. Councillor Turley. Yeah, this will actually be the last part of the $7,500. These three applications will expend the 2018 budget.
So we're spending a little bit of mad money. We're spending a very little bit of mad money.
It's the last part of this program.
Yes. Thank you very much. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. And the item J, the Travel Assistance Grant, John Barsby Secondary School, Secondary Girls Volleyball.
Right, so that council approved the request from the John Barsby Senior School for a travel assistant grant in the amount of $500 for 10 players to attend the AA Girls Provincial Volleyball Championship.
Motion, Councillor Bonner. Councillor Thorpe seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. And I just want to say for the record that John Barsby School in particular has done an amazing job with its sports program in the city and brings great pride and honor to Nanaimo, and I want that noted for the record. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item K, Frank Crane Arena Ammonia Chiller Replacement and Refrigeration Plant Upgrade. This is a much more substantive item. Mr. Harding.
Thank you, Worship. We're requesting council amend the, I'll go through the motion first and I'll give you some background, that the council approve amending the year two of the 2018-222 financial plan to include $471,211 in additional funding from the Facility Development Reserve for a low-charge ammonia chiller system and refrigeration plant upgrades to Frank Crane Arena. And one of the reasons we're asking for this now is we know there's going to be a big demand for new chillers next year. Our tender is ready to go. We wanted to get the tender out before the end of this year. It still won't be awarded until the new year, but we want to get in the queue so when the ice comes out of Frank Crane in the spring, we're ready to go as soon as possible for replacing the plant during the dry floor season.
So moved. Councillor Armstrong, seconded Councillor Martman. Councillor Turley? Sorry, okay. Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to staff, will this affect our 2019 budget going forward?
Mr. Mercer will clarify, but it will not be coming out of the Facility Development Reserve account.
Okay.
It will affect
Nice to have.
Mr. Harding, if I can ask a question, am I incorrect in saying that there's a safety issue with this particular equipment?
Correct. So the chiller is definitely at the end of its life. The reason we're adding the additional $1 here is there's a newer system where we can actually go for a lower charge ammonia. So it's actually substantially less amount of ammonia in the new chiller that will be developed than the one we currently have, plus the chiller is currently at its life.
Thank you. Councillor Bonner?
Thank you, and thanks, since my mic's still on, I appreciate that. The question I had was also regarding security is, since we're using less ammonia, is our alarm system up to date for that lesser amount?
Actually, Mark Memphis here, manager of facilities, he can answer that technical part of it, but as it comes in, all those systems get up to date. We're also updating systems as we go along, so are compatible.
Good morning. Welcome.
Morning. How are you? Your Worship, to Councillor Bonner, yes, the plant will be upgraded with its latest ammonia detection system, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thanks very much. Any further discussion? Call the question. All those in favor? Contrary? Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next item is is a late item. That is the audit planning report for the year ended December 31st, 2018 from KPMG, to be introduced by Ms. Mercer.
Thank you, Your Worship. So each year, our external auditors, KPMG, come before council or the committee and present their audit plan for the year. So they'll outline what they're going to do for our 2018 audit. And with us today is Ms. Liette Bates-Emer and Nancy Ady Mackay.
Thank you very much. Welcome. We're in your hands.
So is this my clicker here?
Excuse me.
Hi. So my name's Liette Bates-Emer. I worked on the audit as a partner last year. So this year I will be taking the lead. Along with me I have Nancy Ady Mackay, who was the previous lead partner, who will be the engagement quality review partner for this year. We also have a senior manager involved for the second year, Sarah Burden. You've got that on there. I'll make a confirmation right now that our audit team is independent from the city. The fees that we charge are consistent with our audit proposal, which was, I think, covered 2016, 17, and 18 year ends. In terms of the status of our audit, so we have come out and performed sort of interim procedures, reviewed some of your controls, the minutes of the organization, developed our plan. We come out again in March and do our year-end fieldwork procedures, and then plan to report to you in probably late April, early May with the results of our audit. So the materiality that we've chosen for this year's audit is 3.5 million, which is consistent with last year. So in an organization where that is not for profit, the auditing standards suggest that you drive your materiality off of a gross benchmark, which could be total revenues, total expenses, total assets. So in the case of the city, we've been using total expenses to drive our materiality number. The auditing rules allow us to be anywhere from 0.5 to 3% of total expenses for our materiality. We're at 2.2%, so sort of in the middle of that range of what would be acceptable. So the materiality number that we're choosing is really the maximum level of error that could be in your financial statements and would not cause us to qualify our audit opinion. So that being said, we perform our procedures at a much lower level than the 3.5 million, and we will report at this level any errors that we find throughout our procedures greater than 175,000. In terms of our audit approach, in our audit plan, you'll see that there is one risk identified, which is risk of fraud caused by management override of internal controls. This item here is required by professional standards, so it's not specific to the city. It's required to be identified in every audit. We have standard procedures to address this risk, which is things like our review of journal entries, a retrospective review of management's estimates. So we haven't identified anything unusual for this year related to that risk. Also, in the planning phases of the audit, we're required to make inquiries of those charged with governance related to fraud. So we pose these questions at this stage and would accept any comments that you have. I believe we also have, we're going to have an in-camera session after this as well. Our audit approach, so we just wanted to highlight an example of the types of procedures that we do. So where we have not identified any specific risks to the city, we sort of have these main areas that are your larger balances where we kind of focus our audit procedures. So obviously capital assets, the largest number on your balance sheet. We are actually verifying additions, so looking at the invoices for capital purchases, ensuring that the items purchased are capital in nature, shouldn't have been expensed, that they relate to this period, things like that. For salaries and benefits, you do have some estimates in your liabilities related to employee future benefits for things like sick or retirement allowances. So for those types of items, we look at the reports prepared by an actuary for what those liabilities have been determined to be, review the assumptions that they use in their calculations, review the data that they receive to perform their calculations of those estimates. Cash and investments, we are confirming with all of the third parties that are holding those items. Revenue and receivables, we're performing analytical procedures over your revenues and expenses. For expenses, to test the cutoff, we're checking for any items that didn't get captured in the December year end. In terms of current developments, so there are a couple new sets of accounting standards that are applicable for this year that will impact the city's financial statements. They are for related party transactions and inter-entity transactions. These new standards are really will impact disclosure, not necessarily how you've treated anything. So for related party transactions, you're looking to identify if there were any transactions with related parties that were at other than arm's length or material to the financial statements, and then be disclosing those. So management has sort of adopted a process to identify any such transactions to see if there would be anything required to be disclosed in your financial statements. The other new standards, assets, contingent assets, and contractual rights, again, would mainly just be, would impact disclosure in your financial statements. So contingent assets to be disclosed would be where you are sort of going to be on the winning side of a litigation, or receive a settlement in the future that's not yet known. Contractual rights is sort of the opposite of commitments disclosures. So right now you're required to disclose where you have any contracts that require future outflows. So if you have a lease agreement and you're paying, this is the opposite of that. So where you have a lease arrangement with someone for which you're receiving lease income. So that will be reviewed and will really only impact disclosure if there is anything there. There's one further set of standards that have been approved that will come out for your 2022 December year end for asset retirement obligations, which we're thinking will likely have a big impact across public sector organizations. But this will have to be investigated over the next little while to see what the impact of the adoption of the asset retirement obligation standards will have on the city. There's just one other item I wanted to point out. In the audit planning report in Appendix 5, you'll see a draft of what we anticipate our audit opinion to look like. And if you're paying close attention to last year's opinion, this looks quite different. It's several pages long. This isn't anything specific to the city. So with changes in auditing standards, changes in auditing standards have required a change in the audit reports. So there's an expansion in the actual report that we issue around the responsibilities of those charged with governance, responsibilities of management, responsibilities of the auditor. That being said, we don't anticipate our actual opinion on your financial statements being any different, but the report does look different for this year.
Any questions? Thank you very much. We will have a further discussion later this morning. In the meantime, on to item 8, question period. Ms. Snellgrove, do we have any questions this morning? No. I would now appreciate a motion that the meeting be closed.
I'll make a motion that the council go into closed based on Section 91 sub C and sub N of the community charter.
Seconder, Councillor Thorpe. Any discussion? All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Ms. Snellgrove?
I wish I could just stay here.
Yes, and that you attend for a moment or two to give us some assistance and advice. Thank you. Shall we take a 10-minute break?
Sure.
Before we start?